Welcome to another edition of Danny Golding TV. This has been an absolutely rough week for our country. On Wednesday, political right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk was shot and killed during his event in Utah. I came across the video on Twitter when the news first broke. I didn't really know exactly what was going on, and I saw the video of him being shot in the throat, and it was absolutely fucking horrifying and traumatizing. This is from somebody who was not a fan of the guy. I probably disagreed with about 90% of what he had to say. But to actually, see the video of him being shot and killed like that, and then finding out that his wife and kids were in attendance and had to see that, is traumatizing. And I basically have not had a good week just because of that. It's affected my week, and I, did not know the guy. I was not a fan of the guy. The last few years, I've seen a lot of clips of him on YouTube, and I knew who he was. Just horrifying. And I'm going to get into how I think the social media algorithm, as you can see from the title of this video, further divides us more. There's this political progressive account that I follow on Instagram called Dream for America that posted this the night that it happened, which could not be more true. It says that the way that 9/12/2001 America would be so disappointed in 9/10/2025 America. I was only 4 years old during 9/11, so I have no memory of it. But I just know that the day after 9/11, everybody came together. No one gave a fuck whether you were a Democrat, Republican, Independent. It did not matter. We all had one common enemy, the terrorists that attacked us. But we all came together as Americans. 24 years later, if you have different views than someone else, you hate them. It seems like. I mean, I've never subscribed to that sentiment, but a lot of people do. Part of the reason why we're so more divided than we were 24 years ago is because of the way that social media is. Because back in 2001, the internet was roughly 10 years old. Social media did not exist unless you count the forums that existed back then. And the internet was only on the computer, not in everyone's pocket like it is today. So that's a major factor in it. But the way the algorithms are set up also further divides us, because someone like me that has somewhat left-wing views, although I overall consider myself independent, I'll get a lot of stuff in my Instagram feed. One of my friends that I haven't seen in years, used to hang out with, he DMs me a whole bunch of right-wing propaganda stuff that appears on his Instagram feed. And we just send it to each other back and forth. And I agree with most of the stuff that I send him. I agree with, but I'll see it on my Instagram feed. It'll be suggested in my algorithm, and it might not be true, but I'll be, maybe you could say, triggered by the stuff that he sends me, so I'll just send him stuff that I see, and I won't maybe not always verify if it's true before I send it, and he definitely doesn't always verify it when he sends it. So it's just further divides us more as a country, and it doesn't bring us together at all. It just further divides us. Does nothing to unite us. And let me just state that if you're on the far left and you're celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, or you're on the far right and you're saying, oh, the Democrats did this, it's all their fault, we need to have a civil war, you guys are both in the fucking wrong, and you're not doing anything to unite us as a country. I knew who Charlie Kirk was for a few years now, but I didn't really watch any of his stuff because I don't really watch a whole bunch of right-wing stuff like that. But about a year ago, my friend showed me this debate where this college girl asked him if his daughter ever got SA'd and got pregnant, would you force her to have the baby if she was 10 years old? And he basically said that yes, the baby would be delivered, implying that he would. And I remember seeing that and absolutely being horrified, being like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And I strongly disagree with that opinion, and I strongly disagree with his abortion stance in general, and I always will. But I'll never disagree with his right to state his opinion, because that's his First Amendment right, and no one deserves to be shot and killed for their First Amendment right. He said some very racially sensitive stuff. He said that the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a mistake, and that Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't a good person, and I would have to look up maybe more context to that, because I don't like to call anyone a racist, and I don't think he was. I've seen him also talk to plenty of black people, have a good relationship with black people, so I really don't think he's racist. And as much as I can't stand our current president, and I think he's a deranged lunatic who should not be president. And he said maybe somewhat racially sensitive stuff. I don't want to call the guy racist because it's hard to envision anybody in 2025 being racist. So I would have to look up more context. But yes, I strongly disagree with him saying MLK, who I think is one of the best heroes in our country's history and definitely the biggest civil rights activist of all time. I don't agree with him saying he wasn't a good person. I don't agree with him saying the 1964 Civil Rights Act was a mistake, because that was the end of all the Jim Crow laws, and that's what brought MLK's vision of having a colorblind society, which obviously we don't have that. We're racially divided in some ways, but overall, I think for the most part, we all get along regardless of race at the same time. He said that if he boarded a commercial airliner and he saw a black pilot, he would hope that they had all the qualifications. Talking about the whole DEI thing, and I'll state that, the DEI, maybe it goes too far, and maybe the affirmative action and all that goes a little bit too far, because we should all, regardless of race, get equal opportunity. So if it abuses it too much, then I don't agree with that. But to say that if he sees a black pilot, he has to immediately think, oh, I better hope he's qualified. I mean, did he not know that every commercial airline pilot goes through years and years and hours and hours of flight training before they can get anywhere near the cockpit of any commercial airliner? So I don't really know what he meant by that. He said he hated the term empathy, thought it was a new age term that does more harm than good, which I don't get. I don't get the whole conservative beef with the word empathy, because Elon Musk also said that empathy is a sign of weakness, which I think that's disgusting to say, because empathy, treating other people the way that they want to be treated, is what makes us as a society great. And Charlie Kirk saying that empathy is some new age term is just not true. I remember learning it when I was in 6th grade, circa 2009. I remember I learned the term of empathy, and years before that, I knew, even before I knew the word itself, I knew what it was just by being able to put myself in someone else's shoes. So I really don't know why he would say that. He pushed a Christian nationalist belief that everyone deserves damnation, which, for those of you that don't know, that means that you deserve to burn in hell for all eternity just for being born, because you're born in sin, and if you don't, believe a certain way, follow a certain way, you deserve to be tortured for all eternity after you die, which I think is a very, very bad thing to push on people, especially children. As someone who was a victim of hearing that when I was young and, being horrified by that, I am strongly against him pushing that belief down everyone's throat. But again, he has the right to do that. It's his First Amendment right. There was a 14-year-old girl that asked him about going to college, saying she wants to get into political journalism and what are the pros and cons of it. And he basically said that the main thing she should be focusing on going to college is finding a husband and wanting to start a family. And, if a girl wants to go to college to find a husband and start a family, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's many women out there that don't want to go to college just to find a husband and be a stay-at-home mom. They actually want to have a career for themselves. So I thought that was kind of a sexist thing to say. But again, he has every right to do that, and he does not have a right to be murdered just for having that opinion. Just about a month ago, actually, I remember I saw this video when Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged. He had this whole bit where, I can't wait to go to a Taylor Kelce concert. Submit to your husband, Taylor, and change your last name, or else you don't really mean it. And I remember seeing that and being like, well, my mom didn't change her last name when she got married. My parents have been married for 35 years, and she never changed her last name. Does that mean that he thinks that somehow my mom isn't really in love with my dad because she never changed her last name? No. So I strongly disagree with him saying that as well. I remember I gained a lot of respect for him, though, because I saw him a few months ago go on a podcast with California Governor Gavin Newsom, and they had a very respectful discussion. They disagreed on probably everything, but they were both respectful to each other. I also saw him go on with Bill Maher, Bill Maher is actually my favorite political commentator, and his political views probably align most with mine, because he's liberal, yes, but he also calls out the far left when they go too far. So I think that his his views align with mine the most, and he went on his podcast Club Random, and both of them had a great discussion. You know, they actually agreed with a lot of things as well, despite disagreeing with some things, but they had both a very respectful conversation despite having different political views. And I gained a lot of respect for Charlie Kirk, seeing him go on with both Gavin Newsom and Bill Maher. And I was like, okay, maybe this guy isn't as bad as I thought. And then later I would see other videos of, like the thing with Taylor Swift, and I was like, okay, I don't really like this guy, but that's beside the point. The point is, he was a human being that lost his life. And that's absolutely disgusting what happened. Now, that being said, he stated that he thought that gun deaths were worth it to keep our God-given Second Amendment rights. I strongly disagree with that statement, and I've spent this entire video condemning what happened to Charlie Kirk, but if you're on the right and you're getting mad at people on the left for reposting that quote and sharing it, you need to chill the fuck out, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with pointing out the irony of the fact that he said that he said those, as fortunate as they may be, certain gun deaths every year are worth it to keep our Second Amendment rights, and then he ends up getting killed by a gun. There's absolutely nothing wrong with pointing out the irony of that. Now, I'm not a fan of guns. I don't really like guns, to be honest. I shot one once, out in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't mind it. It was fun, whatever, but I'm, not a big fan of guns. As long as you're a mentally stable person, you can prove that you don't have any mental issues, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having a firearm if you go through all the legal process and everything like that. You have the proper background checks. I think every gun should be registered like a car. But I don't want to take anyone's guns away. I don't want to take anyone's Second Amendment rights away. But for him to say that the gun deaths are worth it to keep it and not actually trying to find a better solution, I strongly disagree with, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with people pointing out the irony of that, because he proved that he did not really care that much about gun violence and people getting killed by guns. I think any Democrat is for taking away all guns. I mean, that's the narrative I hate fucking hearing on the right. Oh, the Democrats want to take away your guns. No, they fucking don't. They actually want to do something to stop mass shootings from happening. I liked how Charlie Kirk was a good sport about being made fun of by Cartman on South Park, and even changed his profile picture to that. As you can see the thumbnail of this video, I included that because I thought that was fucking hilarious. I remember watching that episode with the whole master debating and absolutely laughing my ass off at that, because that was so funny. And the whole bit about, Trump fucking Satan, sleeping with Satan. I mean, that's just so funny. That's just comedy gold. I gotta check out the newest episode of that. Another thing I want to get into is the fact that they immediately wanted to blame the left for it before they even caught the shooter. No one had any idea what the motive was. You can make your assumptions, you can guess what it is, but you can never prove what it is until you actually find the guy and can actually prove what the reason was. Now, it turns out that the kid that killed him, it turns out that he grew up in, a very red state of Utah. He came from a Mormon, very conservative family. He himself probably had liberal views. It would make sense. It wouldn't really make sense if he had conservative views and, killed a big conservative activist. I've heard a theory that maybe he thought that Charlie Kirk wasn't right enough for her. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The whole point is, it's like a scoreboard. It's like, oh, scoreboard, your side is the more violent one. No, your side's the more violent one. It doesn't fucking matter. Let's just admit that both sides have crazy people that could do that. Like Melissa Hortman, a Democratic lawmaker in Minnesota back in June, was shot and killed, and her husband, John Hoffman, was shot and was wounded. That was by a right-wing crazy. This guy was probably a left-wing crazy that came from a right-wing family and wanted to rebel against his parents. Stop trying to make it into a scoreboard of who's worse, and because that further divides us as a country. Political violence on either side is unacceptable. I remember back in 2011, January 2011, Gabrielle Giffords was a Democratic congresswoman in Arizona, in Tucson, and of course you can see I live in Arizona. And I remember my mom coming home and being terrified, wanting me to turn on the news because a Democratic congressman that she knew who she was, being a Democrat voter in Arizona, was shot in the head, and she thought that she was most likely killed. It turns out she actually survived the shooting, and she's still alive today, and her husband, Mark Kelly, is now a senator in Arizona. But unfortunately, there were 6 people that died, including Christina Taylor Greene, who was a 9-year-old girl that was born on the actual day of 9/11, September 11, 2001. She was born on the most tragic day in our nation's history, and she died in a tragic event. I mean, that's just horrifying. I remember she wanted to be the first ever female Major League Baseball pitcher. And Gabrielle Giffords actually posted about her on the anniversary of 9/11 and the anniversary of her birth just a couple days ago. So political violence happens on both sides. So I'm tired of the argument about which side is worse. I mean, we all need to just admit that both sides can have crazies that can do something like that. And my advice to everyone watching this video is, if you have someone that maybe you used to be friends with, but they have different political views, try as hard as you can to be friends with them if you can. But if they ever, say something that's too out of line, or they threaten you, or they make you uncomfortable, then you don't have to be friends with them. And I'll give you an example of that. There's this kid that I used to be friends with. I don't want anything to do with him after what happened, but he posted stuff about the Charlie Kirk thing, and then he posted something called White Lives Matter, referring to, I guess, to that, even though, I mean, no one knew who the shooter was. I maybe thought that he would have been black or something. No one had any idea at that time. He ended up being white, of course, but that's not the point. But it was in reference to that, and I think it was also in reference to, like, a month ago, there was a white woman on a Charlotte light rail train that was stabbed just completely random, and it happened to be by a black man, and it may have been racially motivated. So I think that was a reference to that. But I just asked him, because I remembered seeing back in 2020 during the all the BLM stuff that happened, he posted all lives matter. So I just asked him, well, why did you change the sentiment to that? And he literally fucking threatened me because he disagreed with the fact that I just asked him that on the day that Charlie Kirk was murdered. So he fucking threatened me, and that's disgusting. He has a car detailing business, and I looked at the reviews to find out that he used racial slurs. So I think that, it pains me to say that. I hate to call anyone racist, but the fact that he would post stuff like that, and then he would say the hard R during his own business, his own job, is absolutely fucking disgusting, and I don't want any association with him at all. But if you have a friend who has a different political view than you that's actually respectful, and you can have a polite debate, just like what Charlie Kirk mostly did, then try to be friends with them, because that's how we come together as a nation and not be divided. And just treat other people the way you want to be treated.